Welcome to Tea Time, the podcast. I am Cassie Marina, fondly known as the Branding Queen, and I am a digital branding expert helping businesses get online and thrive doing so. I am passionate about sharing my knowledge through content creation like this podcast, online classes, and workshops, as well as through the services of my branding agency to help you develop your online systems. Think of this podcast as the place to get the latest advice, strategies, tips, news, and inspiration on building your brand online using the tools available to us, but most importantly, thought-provoking content to improve your mindset, to maximize on these tools and put context to day-to-day developments in the online world of business with a little bit of tea dishing facts and sass, because I really want you to thrive online. So thank you so much for tuning in. Let's begin. Hey guys, so today's episode I'm coming to you guys from my car and not from my office, where there is always some random noises. And that's not the reason why I'm coming to you from my car, is to avoid the noises, because if you listen to my last episode, you would know that I am past that, right? And I just want to say, before I continue on this episode, thank you so much for listening to the episode. For those of you who listened or tuned in, if you didn't tune in yet, go back and listen to episode number 39, which is Things I Love About the Pandemic. And I love that episode so much because, granted, this is challenging times. There is always some silver lining that we can find. And I was really happy that I could have brought some bit of positivity to something that is challenging. I don't want to say that it's entirely negative. It's just what it is. And it is testing us and pushing us to the limits as human beings. And in this episode, I'm not sure if I'm going to get into what I wanted to get into, which was, the whole situation of Trinidad nationals being stranded outside. I'm thinking I'm just going to go ahead and list the things that I don't like about the pandemic, and then I'll do another recording right after this one. So I'm batch creating. So I spoke about the things I don't like that I liked about the pandemic. And I think it's only fitting that the next episode I should jump straight into the things that I don't like about the pandemic. And the first one is the most obvious thing, which is the inability to travel, right? That everybody has their thing that they enjoy doing. So whether it's traveling, or whether it's, partying, or maybe it's fine dining once a month, or, fortnightly, or even every weekend, we all have our thing, and we're all entitled to have our thing. And for many of us, travel is one of those things, right? It's one of those hobbies. And I know I spoke about even like my digital nomad dreams and aspirations, right? To do more of that. And, I think about 2020 and how it's shaped up. And I'm super thankful that I did the amount of traveling that I did last year and even the year before. And not just like traveling like via plane, but even like being in the States, I did that much road tripping with my godmom and so forth. So I'm super grateful for those experiences. And the fact is, it's really taken a mental toll, right? Like what I don't like, speaking from a Trinidadian experience, someone living in Trinidad and having to live through our version of lockdown, right? That's different to any other part of the world. Every different part of the world, county, state, I can't remember I think it's counties in Canada, I think. Yeah. Anyway, every area, town, city has their own version of lockdown, right? But it seems that we have not extremely, but we have our we have some restrictions, right? That seems to be a little more stringent than most places. Now, please don't come at me with stats and stuff like that. You know what? I'm just speaking generally, right? We don't have to be so super politically correct, right? The fact is, it's not as stringent as some islands, etc., etc. And in a world where we're more connected via technology and we can basically live life vicariously through others, especially through Instagram stories, like you can sometimes really feel like you're there, but then reality hits you. I'm here and I can't do those things. I can't go to the park and have a picnic. I can't do this. I can't, like, you see so many people like doing work on the riverside, and what are some other things that I've seen? You see people having like little home parties, not big home parties, but just little get-togethers. And it's not a selfish thing to want to be able to have human interaction. Coming from an introvert, right? I know those of you who know me, who are familiar with me, whether you just know me from Instagram or you listen to the podcast or you know me personally. For those of you who are relatively familiar with me, know by now that I'm an introvert. And if you don't know, I'm an introvert and I can survive. Like at the beginning of lockdown, is staying at home really that like bad? And and the fact is, while I'm an introvert and while many of us might be introverts, we're still human beings and we still want to be able to enjoy our lives. And enjoying our lives doesn't mean that going outside means we want to socialize with other people. It just means we want to be able to socialize with the people that we like, one, and two, we just want to be able to enjoy the world alone. Right? Like I went to Tobago a few weeks ago, as you all would have known if you listened to the last episode or a couple of my episodes back. And I went alone. Now I can't do that. So it's beyond just wanting to get outside and socialize and have a good time. Like it's not natural for human beings to just be cooped up inside all the time. Right? Like even when the world was quote unquote normal, let's say pre-corona, that's the term I'll use. Pre-corona, I would send the kids to school and then I have this nice window of time to myself to do what I want, whether that is to take a self-care day and have white space and go to the beach because I'm self-employed, I make my own schedule, or it's very focused in my work that day and I get a lot done in the space of 3 to 4 hours, or I have a meeting. The fact is I can change things up and be like, you know what, I don't want to work from my office. I might go work at the dining table and not have to worry about bumping into my kids and the noise in the background. I could sit at the dining room table and record a podcast because that area of the house is cooler than the office at the whatever time of day it is. We need to move around and have a change of scenery as creatives to keep inspired and to keep those creative juices flowing. And in the nature of what I do as a creative, I need that, right? Sometimes my office is just not doing it for me and I need to go to a coffee shop and work there. Just so many different things about working from Starbucks is inspiring to me. Things that I hate about the pandemic is a lot of it is connected to travel, but I think that you all as listeners can relate because it's not just travel as in like international travel to another part of the country. So for example, I hate the fact that we can't go to Tobago. Yes, I get the rationale behind it, but at the end of the day, that is a part of the country. Because as far as I'm aware, there are still domestic fights in the States. Now, let's not get political and argue that, it's stupid over there and it's like they're being very reckless. No, but the point is you can still go across states. You know what I mean? right? We'll all have our own unique opinion on what's okay and what's not okay. But at what point is it too much? At what point is it too much caution to the detriment of our mental health, right? If you have made it this far in the episode, that means you are enjoying this episode or getting some value out of it. So now would be a great time to click pause, screenshot this podcast, and share to your Instagram stories or your favorite social media platform. Bonus points if you click the subscribe button and leave a review. Done? Okay, great. Let's get back to the show. I've also observed posts where there are people, very influential people, that even you listening to this podcast look up to and admire. So it's not just me that has those opinions, but I was a little bit taken aback when I saw some people who were like, listen, if I didn't have kids, I would mask up and go and travel. Or not. And when I say travel tends to have this very exotic sound of always meaning international. No, they just probably mean road tripping or going from Texas to California, like cross states. Like, she was like, you know what? I have no judgment, because people are reaching a state of caution fatigue. If you haven't heard that word yet or that term yet, go look it up, right? At the end of the day, this is not to spew and not to spew, but to ignite arguments. But I really like to talk about things that push us past our own little bubble. I find as though as Trinidadians, we tend to be in this bubble of opinion, and it's like I've had to not school. I don't know if school is the word that I want to use, but I've had to like correct people and be like, believe it or not, there are places that you can travel to. There are places that the borders are open. Like, because the person was like, well, I don't know how soon we'll be able to travel. And when I say we, the world will be traveling again. It's like, believe it or not, there are many places that have opened up and are welcoming tourists. So it is happening, and I'm not saying outright just because other people are doing it, aka other countries are doing it, we have to follow. But I just want us to always question everything that is happening and not just take it at surface level. Like, maybe there's something we're missing. Maybe there's something that we can learn about what someone else is doing or another country is doing. So we can learn from their failures and as well as their successes. Like, hey, that didn't work. Let's see how that might not work for us. Maybe we want to avoid doing this because that clearly is not a good way to go. There's too many repercussions. And maybe, you know what, maybe we don't need to be as strict in this area, because the benefits, or should not the benefits, the consequences, for lack of a better term that's coming to me right now, far outweigh the benefits, right? We need to have more conversations around mental health. So the second thing that I don't like about the pandemic is the effect on mental health. I feel as though in this society, and this is like not just Trinidad, but across the Caribbean, mental health always gets passed over. We don't give it the life that it needs to get. And yes, physical health is definitely important. Corona is definitely serious, but that does not mean that we should not at least have the discussion. From the discussion, things can develop into maybe possibly having provisions for the mental health, or just a sense of managing mental health by having these discussions, because then people feel more comfortable to talk about it. They then feel a sense of like, hey, I'm not alone. So this is absolutely normal, and it allows people the space to cope a little better, right? We tend to really just focus on physical, like if your foot not broken, that you're okay, just toughen up, and it's like we need to be more mature. We need to develop a maturity around mental health issues and mental health issues pertaining to corona is definitely something that we need to explore a little bit more, just a little bit more. Okay, So that's the second thing, the effect on your mental health, because you go on social media and you see the things that trigger you that other people can do. In my case, it's travel. And it's also, the other thing is the milestones that the children would have missed out on. The memories that were lost this year that we couldn't make with our loved ones. Like, think about the people who, yes, people are dying, but think about the fact that many people are dying alone. Many people are dying without, because, okay, I'm in this country and that country. What about the fear of losing your loved one and not being able to see them one last time, or visit them one last time, or go see them and attend their funeral? That is very scary thoughts that could cripple anybody's mental health. And I don't mean to have such a dark podcast episode, but it's only fitting to have a contrast. And right. Okay, I just wanted to make sure this was still recording. Right. Like, I want us to just be mindful that these are things, but I also don't want us to get lost in it either. And I think by not talking about it, by not addressing it, we can get lost in the fact that, well, some of us are dealing with these things, because I see a lot of people, I don't want to say over dramatizing, but I could see a lot of people going down the rabbit hole of the depressing memes, etc., etc. And the point I'm trying to make with that is, the mental health is important, but when we have more open discussion about it, we create a safe space to deal with it in a healthy manner, not just these memes and the woe is me, and we just sit there and we might just drink alcohol and we just keep drinking into into the abyss, or whatever other unhealthy way to cope. Nothing is wrong with having a drink. Nothing is wrong with drinking a glass of wine and whatever else it is, but there are also healthy measures. And I'm not a psychologist, and I have not just had the time to schedule in the therapist, because as you all know, I'm super busy these days, and like, the fact that I'm recording this in my car is me trying to slip in much needed things that need to be said into the podcast. But very, very soon, I'm hoping within the next month or 6 weeks, I can record that podcast with the therapist that I can actually give you all really properly explore the topic of mental health in a way that is that comes from somebody who is trained in the field, and then leave you with some coping mechanisms. And even if you don't need it, you can pass it along to someone else. Just by listening, you can make the notes, pass it on, and better yet, share the podcast with them, right? Because some of you may not be struggling, but you are interested to hear in the coping mechanisms. It may not be something that you need, but pass along the information, pass along the podcast whenever it happens, and help them. All right, off the top of my head, things I don't like about the pandemic, honestly, have come to a blank. It's mainly just those two things, which is mental health and the inability to travel. If I had to throw in a third one, I would say there's a lot of burden on parents that also, yes, there have been people who have asked people, when are you going to have kids? Constantly talking about and gloating that, you don't have kids, and what a time to not have kids. It could border on being a little bit insensitive. And I get it. You're saying these things because people were insensitive to the fact that you don't have kids. And, it's nobody's business to ask you why you haven't have kids, or make a little pick-me, or whatever the case may be. But, keep parents in your prayers. I'm not going to get too much into the topic of like the whole online schooling. But what I will say is, not everybody who has access to devices and internet and being able to log in, not because they have the resources, mean that it's easy to log in. Everybody has their own circumstances and lifestyle at home, and it's probably not conducive to logging in from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., even with breaks in between, because the breaks really don't matter, right? The fact is, just now, I need to sneeze. Okay. The fact is, it's more than having the resources. And I think I'm going to end on that one because my nose continues to tickle me. And now it's making me wonder if I have my mask. Because I'm in my car alone, okay? And I'm getting ready to go to the grocery. It's a good reminder. Yes, I have my mask. Great. It's there. But yeah, like, don't panic. Like, sneezing is still normal outside of Corona, okay? But anyway, those are just some of the things that I don't like about the pandemic. I feel like if I express too many more things, it's going to border and be political and controversial. And I mean, that's okay. But I also want to keep my podcast these days not too lengthy. So maybe I might do a part 2. Again, I like to say that don't let the podcast be a one-way conversation. If you have something that you want to say, definitely email me, send me a DM on Instagram so that we can develop the conversation and talk some more around the topic. And I mean, again, that's when I could do part 2s and express what some of you guys said. Maybe you might have even great contributions to add to things you don't like about the pandemic, and I can carry on the conversation that way when I get your feedback. So that is it for now on the things that I don't like about the pandemic. Essentially, it's just the restrictions, obviously, whether it's the restrictions to travel, restrictions to go to the beach, the restrictions to just see your country, because it's like, before it's like, okay, we can't go outside of our borders, but we still have a whole country here to explore. And whether you're listening to this from Grenada, I gotta shout out Grenada because clearly I have a Grenada listenership based on looking at the stats. And anywhere else that you might be listening from, you may not be able to venture too far out because of Corona. And even if you're allowed, you probably don't want to go too far to, expose yourself and your family. But there are still things that we take for granted in our hometown that we can, turn into experiences right here. Get to know your country, get to know your town, get to know your surroundings, and just appreciate what you have right here. And we can't even get to do that. So I would say that's one of the things that's a bit frustrating, because now is the perfect time to really get to know your surroundings. But these measures are in place for a reason, because we just don't know how to act and do the right thing. And I know it's hard wearing a mask. Actually, I think that would be my third thing, right? Well, my third thing was the whole online. My fourth thing is wearing the mask. Like, it's really starting to get to me. Like, I hate trying to go out of the house with the kids because I hate driving and wearing the mask. I can manage to wear the mask for the length of time I'm out of my car, which is most times just being in the grocery or running into any store. That's a very short period of time. But as soon as I get into the car, I rip it off. And honestly, my thoughts, and I am super, super grateful, my thoughts are with those who don't have the luxury of, their own transportation, their own vehicle at home. Whether you drive it or, your husband or your significant other or your aunt drives you. Right? For those who literally have to take public transportation, I do not envy you, and my thoughts are with you, and please stay safe out there. All right, so that is it for this podcast episode. Thanks for listening, and I'm going to hear you on the next one. As usual, you know what to do. If you enjoy this podcast, please share it, screenshot and post on Instagram and tag me so that I can feature you. I won't know that you shared it if you don't tag me. So talk to you guys on the next one.